The massive conference room aboard the Starship Harmony's edge buzzed with alien voices. 12 different species had gathered for the annual Galactic Combat Assessment Conference. Representatives from across the galaxy sat in specially designed chairs that fit their unique body shapes. The air recycling systems worked overtime to handle the different breathing requirements of so many alien races. Captain Lee Hanna sat quietly in the corner. She wore the simple blue uniform of the Human Diplomatic Corps. Her black hair was pulled back in a neat bun. At 35 years old, she had spent 15 years in the military before joining the diplomatic service. Her hands rested calmly on her knees as she watched the proceedings. The conference had one main purpose. Every member species of the Galactic Alliance needed to demonstrate their natural combat abilities. This information would help military planners organize joint operations. When different species fought together, commanders needed to know what each warrior could do. The moderator stood at the front of the room. Thex was an insectoid creature from the Mantarian homeworld. His body reached 7 feet tall with 4 arms and large compound eyes. His voice had a clicking sound when he spoke through the universal translator. "We will now begin the combat demonstrations," Thex announced. "Each species will show their natural fighting abilities. No weapons or technology will be used. Only what your bodies can do naturally." The first to demonstrate were the Krillians. Commander Vex stepped forward. He was 8 feet tall with pale gray skin. His species had evolved natural bone armor that covered their arms and chest. As he flexed, his muscles' sharp bone spikes extended from his forearms. Each spike was 6 inches long and razor sharp. "Krillians can extend bone weapons at will," Vex explained. "These spikes can pierce most metals. Our bone armor can stop projectile weapons." He retracted the spikes with a soft clicking sound. The other delegates nodded with approval. Next came the Vorthak delegation. Ambassador Slick was a reptilian creature with scales that changed color. Her tongue flicked out as she tasted the air. "Vorthaks produce acid," she said. She turned to a metal plate that had been placed for demonstrations. A stream of green liquid shot from her mouth. Where it hit the metal, smoke rose and holes appeared. The acid had eaten through the plate in seconds. The Zephyrian warrior was next. Captain Zahn looked mostly human except for his blue skin and silver eyes. "Zephyrians can phase shift during combat," he explained. He walked toward the same metal plate that the Vorthak had damaged. As his hand touched it, his entire body became transparent. His hand passed through the solid metal as if it was not there. "We can avoid any physical attack this way." More species took their turns. The Felinar showed their enhanced speed and night vision. Huntress Nala moved so fast that she seemed to blur across the room. Her cat-like eyes could see perfectly in complete darkness. The lithoids demonstrated their incredible strength. Warrior. Gorak lifted a chair that weighed 300 pounds with just one hand. His rock-like skin could stop laser fire. The Aquarians could breathe underwater and had poisonous spines. The Crystallites could see through solid objects with their crystalline eyes. The Shadowkin could become invisible for short periods. The Pyrians could survive in temperatures that would melt steel. Each demonstration impressed the gathered delegates more than the last. Natural claws, armor, poison, energy projection, enhanced senses. Every species had evolved some way to fight and survive on their homeworlds. Captain Lee watched it all with calm interest. She took notes on a simple tablet. Ambassador Park Jinho sat next to her. He was older than Lee, with gray hair and kind eyes. Lieutenant Kim Minho sat on her other side. He was young and eager, new to the diplomatic corps. "Impressive displays," Park whispered to Lee. "Very," she agreed quietly. As the demonstrations continued, some of the aliens began to look toward the human section. Whispered conversations started among different species. Lee could see them pointing in her direction. Finally, Thex called for attention. His compound eyes turned toward the human delegates. "We have heard from 11 species," he announced. "We have one remaining, the humans." The room grew quiet. All eyes turned to Captain Lee as she stood up. She walked calmly to the center of the room where the other demonstrations had taken place. Captain Lee Hanna of the Human Diplomatic Corps. She introduced herself with a slight bow. Thex clicked his mandibles together. Please demonstrate human natural combat abilities. Show us your natural weapons, armor, or special powers. Lee stood in the center of the room. She looked around at all the alien faces watching her. Some looked curious. Others seemed amused. A few appeared almost bored, as if they already knew what they would see. Humans have no natural armor, Lee said clearly. We have no claws, spikes, or bone weapons. We cannot spit acid or breathe poison gas. We cannot phase through solid objects or become invisible. Murmurs started around the room. Some aliens exchanged glances. A few made sounds that the translator interpreted as chuckling. Commander Vex leaned forward in his chair. Then how do humans fight when they have no weapons or technology? The question hung in the air. Lee smiled slightly. It was not a mocking smile or an angry one. It was the quiet smile of someone who knew something others did not. That is an excellent question, Commander, Lee replied. Perhaps some of you would like to help me demonstrate? The room fell completely silent. The alien delegates looked at each other with surprise. Was the human seriously suggesting a combat demonstration against species with natural weapons and armor? Huntress Nala tilted her feline head to one side. You wish to fight against us? Without weapons? A demonstration only, Lee clarified. No one needs to be seriously hurt. Just a practical example of human combat methods. Warrior Gorak's rocky features formed what might have been a grin. This should be interesting. A soft human against beings with natural weapons. Several aliens began talking at once. The translator struggled to keep up with all the different languages being spoken. Thex raised all four of his arms for silence. This is highly unusual, the moderator clicked. Combat demonstrations are typically individual displays, not contests, between species. I understand, Lee said. But human combat methods are difficult to explain without practical demonstration. We learn by doing, not just by talking. Ambassador Park stood up from his seat. Captain Lee is one of our most experienced combat specialists. She has volunteered to show how humans fight when they cannot rely on natural advantages. The room buzzed with renewed conversation. This was clearly not what any of the aliens had expected. They had come prepared to see demonstrations of natural abilities. Now they were being offered something much more interesting. Thex looked around the room at the other delegates. Are there volunteers willing to participate in this demonstration? 3 hands immediately shot up. The 3 volunteers stood up from their seats. The first was Commander Vex, the Krillian warrior who had demonstrated the bone spikes earlier. His 8-foot frame cast a long shadow across the conference room, the natural armor on his arms, and chest gleamed under the bright lights. His pale gray eyes focused on Captain Lee with professional interest. The second volunteer was Huntress Nala from the Felinar delegation. She moved with the fluid grace of her cat-like species. Her golden fur had dark stripes that seemed to shift in the light. Her enhanced muscles were clearly visible beneath her diplomatic robes. When she smiled, her sharp canine teeth caught the light. The third volunteer surprised everyone. Warrior Gorak from the Lithoid delegation stood slowly. His massive frame was even larger than Commander Vex. His skin looked like polished granite, with veins of different colored minerals running through it. When he moved, small pieces of rock dust fell from his joints. His voice sounded like grinding stone when he spoke. I accept this challenge, Gorak rumbled. It will be educational to see what a soft species can do. Thex looked concerned. His compound eyes darted between the 3 volunteers and Captain Lee. This is most irregular. These warriors are among the finest combat specialists from their species. Are you certain about this demonstration, Captain Lee? Lee nodded calmly. I am certain, but I want to make the rules very clear for everyone. She walked to the center of the large open space that had been cleared for demonstrations. The alien delegates moved their chairs back to give more room. Some stood up to get a better view. No weapons of any kind, Lee announced. No technology, no equipment, only natural abilities and techniques. The goal is not to injure anyone seriously. When someone yields or cannot continue, the demonstration ends for that participant. Ambassador Park stood up from his seat. I want To add something important, Captain Lee has studied 17 different martial arts systems. She has trained in combat for 20 years. She is not just a diplomat. Lieutenant Kim also stood. Captain Lee was the top hand-to-hand combat instructor for the human special forces. She has trained thousands of soldiers. Some of the alien delegates looked surprised at this information. Others seemed more interested than before. A few began placing small bets on how long the human would last. Commander Vex extended his bone spikes with a soft click. "I will be careful not to pierce anything vital," he said respectfully. "But I cannot retract these during combat. They extend automatically when I fight." Huntress Nala stretched like a large cat. Her movements became flowing and hypnotic. "My reflexes are 5 times faster than most species. I will try not to move too quickly." Warrior Gorak clenched his massive stone fists. Small cracks appeared in the floor where he stood. "My strength can crush metal. I will be very gentle." Lee looked at each of her 3 opponents. She showed no fear or concern. Instead, she seemed to be studying them the way a scientist might examine interesting specimens. "Thank you all for your consideration," she said. "I appreciate your concern for my safety." She removed her blue diplomatic jacket and handed it to Lieutenant Kim. Underneath, she wore a simple black exercise shirt and pants. Her clothing looked ordinary compared to the natural armor and enhanced bodies of her opponents. The contrast was striking. 3 warriors who looked like they were built for battle, facing one human woman who appeared completely defenseless. Lee was smaller than all of them. She had no visible weapons, no armor, no special abilities. She began to stretch slowly. Her movements were controlled and precise. She rotated her shoulders, bent forward to touch her toes, and twisted her back, from side to side. She looked like someone preparing for a morning jog, not a fight against 3 alien warriors. The delegates watching began to murmur among themselves. Some wondered if the human truly understood what she was facing. Others were curious to see what would happen. A few seemed concerned that they were about to witness a very short and unfortunate demonstration. Thex raised his 4 arms for attention. "The rules are established. No weapons, no technology, natural abilities only. The demonstration ends when participants yield or cannot continue. Is everyone ready?" Commander Vex took a combat stance. His bone spikes extended to their full length. His natural armor plates shifted to protect his vital areas. Years of military training were evident in his posture and movement. Huntress Nala dropped into a crouch. Her enhanced muscles tensed like coiled springs. Her pupils dilated to take in more light. Her tail lashed back and forth with anticipation. Every line of her body spoke of speed and deadly precision. Warrior Gorak simply stood upright. His massive form did not need a special stance. His rock-hard skin was armor enough. His enormous fists could crush whatever they hit. He waited with the patience of stone. Captain Lee stood in the center of the triangle formed by her 3 opponents. She bounced lightly on her feet a few times, then settled into a relaxed stance. Her hands were open at her sides. Her breathing was calm and steady. The watching delegates leaned forward in their seats. Even those who had been skeptical were now completely focused on what was about to happen. The room grew quiet except for the soft hum of the air recycling. "Systems, combatants ready?" Thex asked. All 4 participants nodded. "This demonstration will test human combat capabilities without weapons or technology," the moderator announced for the official record. "Beginning in 3, 2, 1. Thex dropped all 4 of his arms. The 3 alien warriors moved immediately. Commander Vex charged from the front, his bone spikes aimed at Captain Lee's torso. Huntress Nala circled to the left with blinding speed. Warrior Gorak approached from the right with thunderous steps that shook the floor. Captain Lee did something that surprised everyone in the room. She smiled, then she moved forward to meet them. The next few seconds would change how every species in the Galactic Alliance thought about humans forever. The moment Thex's arms dropped, chaos erupted in the center of the room. 3 alien warriors, each with natural advantages that had made them legends among their own species, rushed toward one human woman. Commander Vex moved first. His 8-foot frame covered ground quickly as he charged straight ahead. His bone spikes gleamed as they aimed for Captain Lee's center mass. Years of military training guided his attack. He planned to stop just short of actually piercing her, but close enough to force a surrender. Huntress Nala moved like liquid lightning. Her enhanced reflexes kicked in as she circled to Lee's left side. Her plan was simple: use her superior speed to attack from the blind spot while Vex distracted from the front. Her claws extended as she prepared to pin the human's arm. Warrior Gorak approached with the inevitability of an avalanche. Each step made the floor shake. His massive stone fists were ready to grab the human and end the demonstration quickly. His rock-hard skin made him confident that nothing the small human could do would affect him. What happened next shocked every delegate in the room. Captain Lee did not retreat. She did not dodge to the side. She did not try to run or call for the demonstration to stop. Instead, she stepped forward directly toward Commander Vex. As Vex's bone spikes thrust toward her, Lee moved with precision that seemed impossible. She stepped inside his reach, closer to his body than his spikes could effectively strike. Her left hand grabbed his right wrist just below the bone spike. Her right hand gripped his elbow. In one fluid motion, Lee dropped her center of gravity and turned her hip into Vex's body. She used his own forward momentum against him. The 8-foot warrior found himself flying through the air over Lee's shoulder. Vex crashed into the metal wall of the conference room with a sound like thunder. The impact was so hard that it left a dent in the reinforced hull plating. His bone spikes retracted automatically as his body's defense systems responded to the trauma. He slid down the wall and landed in a heap on the floor. The entire sequence took less than 2 seconds, but Lee was not finished. Even as Vex was flying through the air, Huntress Nala was attacking from the left. The Felinar's enhanced reflexes should have made her impossible to counter. She moved faster than most beings could even see. Lee saw her coming anyway. As Nala's claws reached for Lee's arm, the human woman pivoted smoothly. Instead of being where Nala expected, Lee was suddenly facing the Felinar directly. Nala's superior reflexes meant nothing when her opponent had predicted exactly where she would be. Lee's elbow drove into Nala's solar plexus with surgical precision. The strike hit exactly the right spot to disrupt the Felinar's breathing and nerve cluster. Nala's enhanced muscles meant nothing when the attack targeted her body's control systems rather than trying to overpower her strength. The proud huntress dropped to her knees, gasping for breath. Her enhanced reflexes were useless when she could not breathe properly. Her claws retracted as her body focused on the more urgent need for oxygen. Total time elapsed, 3 seconds. Warrior Gorak was still approaching. His massive form had not yet reached striking distance when his 2 allies were already defeated. But rather than being discouraged, the sight seemed to energize him. His stone features formed something like a grin. "Impressive," he rumbled as he continued forward. "But I am not so easy to throw or wind." Lee looked up at the approaching giant. Gorak was right. His technique that had worked on Vex would not be effective against someone whose weight was measured in tons. The strike that had dropped Nala would probably not even be felt through Gorak's rock-hard skin. So Lee used a different approach. As Gorak reached for her with his massive stone hands, Lee moved like water. She flowed around his grasp instead of trying to resist it. Her hands found pressure points on his wrist and forearm, locations where even lithoid anatomy had vulnerable nerve clusters. But the real attack was not with her hands. As Gorak leaned forward to grab the elusive human, Lee planted her foot behind his ankle and drove her shoulder into his chest. It was not about overpowering the giant. It was about physics. Gorak's own massive weight worked against him. His forward momentum, combined with Lee's precise application of leverage, sent him tumbling backward. The warrior who could crush metal with his bare hands found himself falling, like a toppled statue. He hit the floor with an impact that shook the entire conference room. Several delegates were thrown from their seats by the vibration. Emergency lights flickered as the ship's systems compensated for the sudden shock. Gorak lay on his back, staring at the ceiling in complete bewilderment. His rock-hard skin had protected him from injury, but his pride was thoroughly shattered. He had been defeated by someone a fraction of his size and weight. Captain Lee stood in the center of the room, breathing normally. Her black exercise clothes were not even wrinkled. She looked as calm as she had before the demonstration began. Commander Vex was slowly climbing to his feet, his natural armor showing cracks where he had hit the wall. Huntress Nala was still on her knees, finally beginning to catch her breath. Warrior Gorak remained on the floor, not because he could not get up, but because he was still processing what had happened to him. The entire demonstration had lasted 4 seconds. The conference room was completely silent. 12 different species stared at the scene before them. 3 of their finest warriors had been defeated so quickly that some delegates were not sure exactly what they had witnessed. Thex's compound eyes were wide with disbelief. His translator struggled to find words. How? What? This is not possible. Ambassador, Park stood up slowly. His expression was proud but not surprised. Ladies and gentlemen, you asked about human combat capabilities without weapons or technology. What you have just witnessed is the result of thousands of years of martial development. Lieutenant Kim added, every human child learns basic self-defense. Captain Lee is what we call an expert. The silence continued. No one seemed to know what to say. The demonstration had challenged everything they thought they knew about combat, strength, and natural advantages. Captain Lee walked over to each of her 3 opponents. She helped Commander Vex steady himself as he stood. She assisted Huntress Nala to her feet with gentle hands. She offered Warrior Gorak a hand up, though he needed to rise mostly under his own power due to his weight. To each of them she bowed respectfully. Thank you for helping with the demonstration, she said. You are all skilled warriors. This was about technique, not about who is stronger or braver. The 3 aliens looked at her with a mixture of respect, confusion, and genuine curiosity. They had been defeated, but not humiliated. The human had treated them as honorable opponents, not as enemies. The real questions were just beginning. The conference room remained frozen in absolute quiet. 47 delegates from 12 different species sat motionless in their specially designed chairs. The only sounds were the soft hum of life support systems and the occasional creak of the ship's hull as it traveled through space. Commander Vex stood against the wall where he had landed. His natural bone armor showed spiderweb cracks from the impact. He touched the damaged plates with careful fingers, still not quite believing what had happened. In 30 years of military service, he had never been defeated so quickly or completely. Huntress Nala remained standing but kept one hand pressed to her chest where Lee's elbow had struck. Her enhanced metabolism was already healing the damage, but the memory of being unable to breathe would stay with her much longer. Her golden eyes watched, the human with newfound wariness and respect. Warrior Gorak had finally managed to sit up on the floor. His massive frame took up considerable space even while seated. Small fragments of his rock-like skin had chipped off during his fall and lay scattered around him. He stared at Captain Lee as if seeing her for the first time. The human woman herself stood calmly in the center of the room. She showed no signs of exertion from the brief encounter. Her breathing was steady and relaxed. She might have been standing in a peaceful garden rather than having just defeated 3 alien warriors in combat. Thex, the insectoid moderator, was the first to break the silence. His 4 arms moved in small, nervous gestures as he tried to process what he had witnessed. I have been moderating these conferences for 15 years, he clicked through his translator. I have never seen anything like this. A delegate from the Aquarian sector raised a tentacle. Was this some form of technology? Hidden devices, perhaps? No technology was detected, Thex confirmed, consulting his monitoring equipment. The scanners show only natural biological activity from all participants. A crystallite representative leaned forward, her gem-like eyes focusing intently on Lee. My people can see through most solid objects. I observed the entire encounter. The human used only her physical body and knowledge. Whispered conversations began to break out among the different delegations. The universal translators worked overtime as species that rarely communicated with each other, began sharing their observations and theories. The Shadowkin delegate, barely visible even when not using his invisibility, spoke in a voice like wind through leaves. I have studied many forms of combat across the galaxy. What I witnessed was not random violence. Every movement had purpose and precision. Ambassador Park stood up from his seat. The older human diplomat looked around the room, at all the alien faces focused on him. I believe you have questions. A chorus of voices erupted simultaneously. Dozens of aliens began talking at once in their native languages. The translator system overloaded and produced only static for several seconds before managing to sort out the chaos. Thex raised all four arms for quiet. Please, one at a time, this is still an official conference. The Vorthak ambassador was first to speak clearly. Her reptilian features showed genuine confusion. How did she know where we would attack? Huntress Nala moved faster than most beings can even perceive. And how did she generate enough force to throw Commander Vex? Added a Pyrian delegate whose body temperature made the air around him shimmer with heat. He masses twice what she does. Warrior Gorak's voice rumbled from the floor where he still sat. She used my own strength against me somehow. I felt my weight working to help her instead of helping me. Captain Lee listened to all the questions with patient attention. She looked to Ambassador Park, who nodded encouragingly. These are good questions, Lee said. The answers might surprise you. A Felinar delegate stood up, her movements sharp with agitation. Huntress Nala has reflexes that allow her to dodge projectile weapons. How did you anticipate her attack? Lee smiled slightly. I did not need to be faster than her reflexes. I only needed to understand how she would use them. Explain, demanded the Krillian military attaché. His bone armor was extended in a defensive posture as he spoke. Your species have developed remarkable natural abilities, Lee began. But those abilities follow patterns. Commander Vex attacked the way his training and biology dictated. Huntress Nala moved the way her enhanced reflexes and instincts guided her. Warrior Gorak approached with the confidence his strength and durability provided. She paused and looked around the room. Humans learned long ago that predictability is a weakness, even when combined with superior natural abilities. Lieutenant, Kim stood up to add context. Captain Lee studied each of your species before this conference. She knows your anatomy, your fighting styles, and your psychological profiles. You researched us? Commander Vex asked. His cracked armor plates made small, clicking sounds as he moved. Of course, Ambassador Park confirmed. Did you think we would attend a combat assessment conference without understanding our fellow Alliance members? The implications of this statement began to sink in around the room. The aliens had demonstrated their natural abilities freely, assuming that knowledge would only be useful for military planning. It had not occurred to most of them that other species might study their weaknesses as well as their strengths. A young Zephyrian officer raised his hand. But surely our phase-shifting ability cannot be countered by knowledge alone. Can it not? Lee asked in return. Your phase-shifting requires concentration and energy. It has a maximum duration. You cannot phase through energy attacks, only physical ones. You must solidify to interact with the physical world. The Zephyrian's blue skin paled noticeably. How do you know these details? Because humans have been studying warfare for thousands of years, Lieutenant Kim explained. We analyze everything. More uncomfortable shifting occurred around the room. Species that had felt secure in their natural advantages began to realize that those same advantages might also be vulnerabilities in the right circumstances. Huntress Nala finally spoke, her voice still slightly breathless. What you did to me, that strike to my breathing. How did you know exactly where to hit? Anatomy, Lee replied simply. All biological beings have similar basic structures, different materials, different strengths, but similar weak points, nerve clusters, joint connections, breathing pathways. Warrior Gorak managed to stand up, his massive form casting shadows across half the room. You made me defeat myself, used my strength to cause my fall. Physics, Lee explained. Force, momentum, leverage, gravity. These laws apply to everyone equally. Size and strength can become disadvantages if applied incorrectly. The conference room fell quiet again as delegates absorbed these explanations. What they had witnessed was not some mysterious human superpower. It was applied knowledge, careful study, and thousands of years of accumulated experience. Thex looked down at his official recording equipment. The devices were still analyzing the brief combat encounter, breaking down every movement and measuring every force applied. "The readings confirm everything Captain Lee has said," he announced. "No technology was used. The encounter was decided by technique, knowledge, and the application of physical laws." A long pause followed this statement. Then Commander Vex asked the question that was on everyone's mind. What else can humans do? Captain Lee helped Warrior Gorak steady himself as he stood to his full height. Despite his massive size and rocky exterior, she treated him with the same courtesy she would show any honored opponent. She then turned to face the room full of alien delegates all waiting for answers to Commander Vex's question. "What else can humans do?" Lee repeated thoughtfully. "That is a complex question. Perhaps I should start with why we learned to do what you just saw." She walked slowly to the center of the demonstration area. Her movements were calm and controlled, every step deliberate. The watching aliens followed her with intense attention. "Long ago on our homeworld, humans were not the dominant species," Lee began. "We shared our planet with creatures much stronger than us. There were predators with claws longer than my fingers, animals with hide thicker than Warrior Gorak's skin, beasts faster than Huntress Nala." She gestured to the 3 warriors who had participated in the demonstration. All 3 listened carefully to her words. "We had no natural weapons, no armor, no poison or acid. We were slower than many animals, and weaker than most. By all rights, we should have been prey for every other species on our world." Ambassador Park stood up to continue the explanation. "But humans had one advantage that proved more valuable than claws or armor. We could learn. Not just learn," Lieutenant Kim added, "but learn from our mistakes and improve constantly." Lee nodded. "When a human fought a creature with claws and survived, that human would teach others what worked. When someone discovered how to use an opponent's strength against them, that knowledge spread to the whole tribe." A crystallite delegate raised her hand. "But surely natural evolution would have given you some advantages over time." "Evolution did give us advantages," Lee confirmed, "but not the ones you might expect. It gave us brains that could analyze and remember. It gave us hands that could manipulate tools and demonstrate techniques. Most importantly, it gave us the ability to cooperate and share knowledge." She began to demonstrate basic movements as she spoke, simple steps, turns, and hand positions that looked almost like a slow dance. Over thousands of years, humans developed fighting systems based on observation and testing. We studied how force travels through the body. We learned where every creature was vulnerable, including ourselves. Commander Vex's cracked armor clicked as he shifted position. "You mean you studied how to fight other humans?" "Especially other humans," Park confirmed grimly. "For most of our history, humans were our own greatest threat. We fought wars against each other for territory, resources, beliefs, and sometimes for no good reason at all." The room grew very quiet at this statement. Most species in the Alliance had conflicts in their history, but few had spent as much time fighting their own kind as humans apparently had. "Every war taught us something new," Lee continued. "Every battle was a lesson in what worked and what did not. The techniques that failed were abandoned. The ones that succeeded were improved and passed on." She moved through a series of flowing movements that looked almost like art. Each motion demonstrated a principle of combat without actually fighting anyone. "We learned that a small force applied to the right spot could defeat a large force applied poorly. We discovered that timing mattered more than speed. We found that understanding your opponent was more valuable than being stronger than them." "Huntress." Nala stood up slowly, still keeping one hand pressed to her chest. "How many of these fighting systems do humans have?" "Hundreds," Lieutenant Kim answered. "Every human culture developed their own methods. Some focused on using an opponent's force against them. Others emphasized striking specific target points. Some taught how to fight multiple opponents. Others specialized in ground fighting or weapons." And Captain Lee knows all of these? Warrior Gorak asked. Lee smiled modestly. Not all. No human could master every system in one lifetime. But I have studied 17 different martial arts, and the principles behind them apply to most forms of combat. She began to explain some of these principles to the fascinated alien audience. She showed how leverage could multiply force, allowing a smaller person to move someone much larger. She demonstrated how understanding anatomy made it possible to find weak points on any creature. She explained how predicting an opponent's likely actions made superior speed less important. The throw I used on Commander Vex is called a shoulder throw in several human fighting systems, she explained. It works by using the opponent's forward momentum and redirecting it upward and over my fulcrum point. She walked through the movement, slowly with an imaginary opponent, showing how each part of the technique built on the previous part. The strike I used on Huntress Nala targeted a nerve cluster that exists in most oxygen-breathing species. Disrupting it temporarily interferes with breathing and movement coordination. She demonstrated the precise hand position and angle of attack, though without making actual contact with anyone. The takedown I used on Warrior Gorak employed his own mass against him. I simply removed his base of support while he was committed to moving forward. Gravity did most of the work. Again, she showed the technique slowly, emphasizing how minimal force could create maximum effect when applied correctly. The alien delegates watched with growing amazement as Lee broke down what had seemed like impossible feats into understandable components. A Shadowkin representative spoke from his barely visible position. These techniques, they are taught to all humans. Basic versions are taught to most humans, Ambassador Park confirmed. More advanced training is available for those who choose to specialize. How advanced? Commander Vex asked. Lee considered the question carefully. There are humans who have devoted their entire lives to the study of combat. Masters who understand the human body better than most doctors. Experts who can defeat multiple armed opponents while remaining unarmed themselves. And there are humans who specialize in fighting non-human opponents, Lieutenant Kim added. We call them xenocombat specialists. This statement caused another wave of uncomfortable shifting around the room. The idea that humans had people specifically trained to fight other species was disturbing to many of the delegates. But combat is only one application of these principles, Lee continued quickly. The same knowledge that makes us effective fighters also makes us effective healers, teachers, and protectors. She began to demonstrate gentler applications of the same principles. Techniques for safely restraining someone without injuring them. Methods for helping injured people move without causing additional harm. Ways to use physical leverage to assist rather than defeat. The goal is not to hurt others, she emphasized. The goal is to survive, protect those who cannot protect themselves, and maintain peace through strength. Thex had been recording everything throughout the explanation. His compound eyes reflected the room's lighting as he processed the information. This knowledge, he clicked thoughtfully. It explains much about human behavior that we have observed but not understood. Such as? Ambassador Park asked. Human soldiers seem to remain calm in situations that panic other species. Human negotiators often succeed where others fail. Human explorers survive in environments that defeat better-equipped expeditions. Lee nodded. The same principles apply. Observe, analyze, adapt, survive. Whether facing an enemy soldier, a difficult negotiation, or a hostile environment. The demonstration was clearly over, but the questions were just beginning. Every species in the room was reconsidering what they knew about their human allies. As the official conference session came to an end, small groups of aliens gathered around the human delegation. The conversations that followed would change relationships throughout the Galactic Alliance. The formal conference session had ended, but nobody was leaving. Small groups of aliens clustered around the human delegation, asking questions in hushed voices. The atmosphere in the room had changed completely from the casual curiosity of the morning to something approaching reverence and concern. Thex stood at his moderator's station updating the official Alliance combat records. His four hands worked quickly across different input devices as he struggled to categorize what he had witnessed. How do I classify this? He muttered to his aide. Humans show no natural weapons, No special abilities, no enhanced physical characteristics, but they defeated 3 of our finest warriors in seconds. His aide, a younger member of the same insectoid species, clicked nervously. Perhaps we create a new category, naturally weaponless but combat optimized through applied science. Thex considered this suggestion. Applied science implies technology. This was something else. Knowledge weaponized through training and experience. Across the room, the Krillian delegation had surrounded Commander Vex. Their bone armor was extended, in defensive positions as they spoke in rapid, clicking voices. "How is this possible?" demanded the Krillian military attaché. "Your armor is designed to stop projectile weapons and energy blasts. How did a simple throw crack it?" Vex touched the spiderweb fractures in his natural plating. "The human did not attack my armor directly. She used my own momentum to drive me into the wall. The armor protected me from the impact, but it was not designed for that kind of stress." The military attaché's bone spikes extended further. "This means our primary defensive advantage can be turned into a liability." "Not just ours," Vex replied grimly. "Did you see what she did to the others? Every natural advantage became a weakness in her hands." Meanwhile, the Felinar delegation was having their own troubled discussion. Huntress Nala sat in a specially designed chair while a medic examined her breathing. "Your reflexes are among the finest in the Alliance," the medic said, running a scanner over Nala's chest. "How did the human strike you so precisely?" "She did not try to match my speed," Nala explained, her voice still slightly strained. "She positioned herself where I would be, not where I was. My enhanced reflexes were useless because she had already predicted my movement." The eldest member of the Felinar delegation, a silver-furred female with scarred hands, leaned forward. "This suggests humans understand our psychology as well as our biology." "More than that," Nala continued. "She knew exactly where to strike to disrupt my breathing without causing permanent damage. That requires detailed knowledge of our anatomy." The implications of this statement spread through the Felinar group like ripples in water. If humans understood their weaknesses so precisely, what did that mean for the Alliance's military structure? The lithoid discussion was perhaps the most disturbing of all. Warrior Gorak sat on the reinforced floor, surrounded by his fellow stone-skinned giants. The damage to the conference room floor around him was being repaired by maintenance robots. "I have fought creatures that could shatter mountains," Gorak rumbled. "I have survived in the cores of stars. How did a soft human topple me?" The lithoid science officer ran his hands over the chips and cracks in Gorak's skin. "She used physics against you. Your mass, which usually makes you unstoppable, became the force that brought you down." "But how did she know the exact point to apply pressure?" asked another lithoid warrior. "Our balance points are not obvious to other species." "Humans study everything," Gorak replied with something like admiration in his rocky voice. "She knew my anatomy better than I do." Ambassador Park found himself at the center of multiple conversations as delegates from different species approached with questions. "How long have humans been developing these abilities?" asked a Zephyrian diplomat. "Thousands of years," Park replied honestly. "But we have only been in space for a few centuries." "And in that time, you have studied all Alliance species?" The Tiu question came from a Vorthak representative whose scales had shifted to an anxious yellow color. "We study all potential allies and threats," Lieutenant Kim answered. "It is how we survive in a galaxy full of beings more naturally powerful than us." This statement caused uncomfortable silence among the listening aliens. The word threats had not gone unnoticed. A crystallite delegate spoke carefully. "Do you consider Alliance members to be threats?" Ambassador Park chose his words with diplomatic precision. "We consider everyone to be potential friends or potential enemies depending on circumstances. Preparation for both possibilities is simply practical." Captain Lee approached the group. She had been speaking quietly with Thex about the official records. "I want to clarify something important," she announced to the gathered delegates. The conversations around the room quieted as aliens turned to listen. "What you saw today was not a demonstration of human superiority," Lee said clearly. "It was an example of human adaptation. We learned to fight because we had to learn. We studied other species because we were surrounded by beings more powerful than us. She gestured toward the 3 warriors she had defeated. All 3 were now standing and listening with respectful attention. Commander Vex, Huntress Nala, and Warrior Gorak are skilled fighters. In their natural environments, with their natural advantages, they would likely defeat me. What happened here was a specific demonstration under artificial conditions. Commander, Vex stepped forward. His cracked armor caught the light as he moved. You are being modest, Captain Lee. What you showed us was mastery of principles we did not know existed. Which brings up an important point, Ambassador Park added. Humans would be happy to share this knowledge with our alliance partners. This offer created immediate interest among the alien delegations. Several species began talking excitedly among themselves. You would teach us these techniques? Asked the Shadowkin representative. We would teach defensive applications, Lee clarified. Methods for protecting yourself and others. Understanding of anatomy for medical purposes. Physics principles that apply to engineering and construction. What about offensive techniques? The question came from a young Pyrian whose body temperature made the air shimmer around him. Ambassador Park's expression became more serious. Combat training would be available only to official Alliance military personnel, and only after proper psychological evaluation. Lieutenant Kim added, Humans have learned that combat knowledge must be balanced with wisdom and restraint. Not, everyone should have access to techniques designed to disable opponents quickly. The discussions continued for another hour. Representatives from every species approached the human delegation with questions about training programs, knowledge exchange, and strategic partnerships. As the gathering finally began to break up, small but significant changes were already visible. Species that had rarely cooperated before were now discussing joint training exercises. Military planners were reconsidering their assumptions about human capabilities. Diplomatic relationships were being re-evaluated. Commander Vex approached Captain Lee as she prepared to leave. His bone armor had retracted, showing respect and peaceful intentions. I have fought for 30 years across 17 different worlds, he said formally. Today I learned that the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy is not what you carry, but what you know. Lee bowed respectfully. Knowledge is only dangerous when combined with the wisdom to use it properly. I hope we can work together to make the Alliance stronger and more peaceful. Huntress Nala joined them, her breathing now fully recovered. Will you really teach us these methods? I will teach anyone who wants to learn, Lee confirmed. But remember that with great knowledge comes great responsibility. The same techniques that can defeat an enemy can also save a friend. Warrior Gorak's heavy footsteps announced his approach. The massive lithoid had to duck slightly to avoid hitting his head on the ceiling fixtures. What you did today, he rumbled, thoughtfully. It was not about strength or weakness, it was about understanding. Exactly, Lee agreed. Understanding yourself, understanding others, and understanding the principles that govern all physical interaction. As the 3 warriors walked away together, they were already discussing the implications of what they had learned. Their conversation would continue for days and would eventually reach the highest levels of their respective governments. Thex finished updating his records and approached the human delegation. The official report will note that human combat effectiveness exceeds all previous estimates, he announced. This will have significant implications for Alliance military planning. Good, Ambassador Park replied. Accurate information makes for better decisions. There is one more thing, Thex continued. Several species have requested that humans provide combat instructors for their military academies. Lieutenant Kim smiled. We will consider all requests. Training programs could benefit everyone involved. As the human delegation prepared to board their shuttle back to the diplomatic quarters, Captain Lee took one last look around the conference room. The demonstration had lasted only seconds, but its effects would ripple through the Galactic Alliance for years to come. Another successful diplomatic mission, Ambassador Park noted with satisfaction. I wonder what they will ask us to demonstrate. Next time, Lieutenant Kim mused. Lee adjusted her simple blue uniform and picked up her diplomatic case. Hopefully something.